So as I move along this path of personal development, I come to realize how important history is in truly understanding things, which brings me to Nofap. Nofap has exploded over the last few years, thanks in great part to YouTubers who have posted 30-day, 90-day, even 5+ year Nofap experiments where they mostly claim that retaining their semen has turned them into a demigod. Now, as for why most of these demigods still appear to be recording videos from their mother's basements, I don't know. But what I do know is that there are a lot of problems with Nofap videos. As a content creator, there's a lot of motivation to create Nofap Change My Life videos because they get tons of clicks. And as a content consumer, I'm likely to click on any video promising dramatic results from something that can be explained in a single sentence. And so I must repeat, if we want to understand something, we really need to look at history to get the full picture. Because there are hundreds of years of mind-blowing historical perspectives relating to Nofap, more specifically to masturbation, ejaculation, and semen retention, and how those things influence our energy, focus, motivation, and overall ability to become better. Now, to save you some time, I've poured through thousands of pages of material, despite some of the awkwardness this created. And in this video, we're going to be taking a hard look at what I thought were the 3 most interesting historical perspectives on Nofap. Those held by the Taoists, Christians, and then later the Europeans during the Age of Enlightenment. I promise that by the end of this video, you'll see Nofap not as a miracle technique, but rather as one of many tools that can be employed within the greater art of sexual transmutation, which is something that I've personally used at every level of my development to achieve some of my most significant growth. Let's begin. Number 1, the Taoist belief that too frequent masturbation is unhealthy. So for those of you guys who follow the channel or follow me on Instagram, you know that Eastern philosophy is my greatest influence. I think it's the perfect antidote to the disease of chronic overthinking here in the West. And so it's no surprise that for Taoists, complex themes like masturbation, ejaculation, and Nofap all fall into the nice, simple box of sexual energy. The principal text of Taoism is the Tao Te Ching. It's like the Bible of Taoism. And while there are no mentions of anything specifically sexually related, I'd like to offer my own interpretation on Nofap. It goes like this. If we feel the urge to masturbate and it feels right, then we should do it. If we feel this urge and it feels wrong or out of balance, and we believe that we can use something like Nofap to help restore balance without creating more imbalance, then we should do that. Again, that's just my interpretation as someone who's studied the Tao Te Ching for the past 8 years and has selected passages tattooed on their body. Now let's dive a little deeper. Within Taoism, yin and yang represent the 2 mutually dependent energies of all life. Yang energy, the male energy, is characterized as hot energy, creative, individualistic, strong, offensive. Yin energy, the female energy, is characterized as cold energy, receptive, group-oriented, elegant, defensive. Now here's the thing, men and women both have yin and yang energy. And according to Taoists, we should aim to balance these energies if we want to live a healthy life. They saw semen as vital life force and believed that too frequent masturbation could lead to a rapid depletion of the important yang energy, thus creating an imbalance with yin energy that would result in premature aging, disease, and fatigue. For this reason, Taoists created ejaculation formulas as a means by which to maintain optimal health. Sun Sumao, who was given the title of King of Medicine during his time as China's most highly regarded physician during the Tang Dynasty, recommended that men under 50 should only ejaculate twice monthly. Other Taoists suggested that ejaculation frequency should be in accordance with the seasons, no more than once every 3 days during the spring, twice a month in summer and fall, and then Nofap during all of winter. Mantak Chia, a modern Taoist whose views have become extremely popular over the last few decades, also believes that we should follow a schedule according to our age. At around 20 years old, we should masturbate about once every 4 days. At around 30, once every 8 days. At around 40, once every 12 days. Some of Mantak's most popular teachings include learning how to masturbate and reach orgasm without ejaculation, by learning how to close the valve of the prostate gland by using the power of the mind. I actually practiced some of these techniques in the weeks leading up to my first boxing fight, where I wanted to have sex, but I didn't want to ejaculate. And it was easily some of the most pleasurable, erotic sex I've ever had. I haven't tried this with masturbation, but I would maybe like to. And if you guys are interested in a video on that, let me know in the comments below. Number 2, the Christian belief that masturbation can be sexually immoral. Okay, so before we get into the Christian belief surrounding Nofap, I have to say something. There's a tendency, especially with younger generations, to completely disregard the wisdom of religion. And here's what I'll say to that. Do I think Adam and Eve was a real story? No. Do I think there's incredible significance in the idea that Adam and Eve, who represent mankind, broke the one rule that God had given them and ate fruit from the forbidden tree of knowledge of good and evil after the serpent, a metaphorical representation of evil, convinced them to do so, and that this knowledge of good and evil is precisely the thing that caused them to separate from unconscious identification with the natural world and into a state of self-consciousness where they were now subject to uniquely human emotions such as the shame they felt in realizing they were now naked, of which resulted in their expulsion from paradise into the world as we know it, this effectively marking the starting point for all of humanity. Yes, I think there's incredible significance here. The Bible is the oldest book in existence, representing thousands of years of some of the most profound human observations told through unbelievably insightful stories and myths. The Christian conceptualization of masturbation and nofap is mostly rooted within the concept of sexual immorality, which is referenced in many biblical passages. Here are just a few of them. Among you, there should not be a good hint of sexual immorality or of every type or types of impurity. Sexual immorality is a work of the flesh, and the one who partakes is liable to lack entry into the kingdom of God. It's God's will that you should be sanctified, that you should avoid sexual immorality, that each of you should learn to control your own body in a way that is holy and honorable. Now, there are many more passages like these, and here's my interpretation of all of this. When we become slaves to our sexual impulses to the extent that they cloud our judgment, when we form unhealthy porn addictions, or when we come to see women as purely sexual objects, these are all examples of sexual immorality. And I can give you guys virtually endless examples of how acting in ways that are sexually immoral can and will catastrophically decrease the overall quality and fulfillment that we experience in life. So my interpretation of the Bible's position on nofap is this. Masturbation isn't a sin, but sexual immorality is. Nofap can be a great tool by which we can learn to control sexual immorality, but whether or not masturbation is good or bad is subjective, not objective. Number 3, the Age of Enlightenment and masturbation as weakness. In 1760, Swiss physician Samuel Auguste Tissot wrote Diseases Caused by Masturbation, whose views became hugely popular during the European Age of Enlightenment. Tissot described masturbation as a general wasting of the animal machine, a debility of all the bodily senses, and of all the faculties of the mind. He believed that masturbation was the cause of all the diseases of old age, and that the too great loss of semen produces weakness, debility, immobility, convulsions, emaciation, dryness, pains in the membranes of the brain, impairs the senses, particularly that of sight, gives rise to dorsal consumption, indolence, and to several diseases connected with them. Now, as extreme as this sounds, he actually had a lot of supporters. Among them was one of history's greatest philosophers, Immanuel Kant, who saw masturbation as an unnatural use and so misuse of one's sexual attribute, which he deemed to be a violation of morality to the highest degree. He saw it as man merely using himself to satisfy an animal impulse, which he considered worse than suicide. Murdering oneself requires courage, and in this disposition, there is still always room for the respect for the humanity in one's own person. But unnatural lust, which is complete abandonment of oneself to animal inclination, makes man not only an object of enjoyment, but still further, a thing that is contrary to nature, that is, a loathsome object, and so deprives him of all respect for himself. Other later supporters of Tissot's views included the Americans Sylvester Graham, inventor of graham crackers, and John Kellogg, inventor of the popular breakfast cereal cornflakes, whose bland food products were actually designed with the intention of subduing sexual excitement as a way to prevent masturbation and premarital sex. What do you guys think seems to be the central historical lesson that we can learn from the cultures that came before us that were described in this video? Why do you guys think that some guys benefit so radically from nofap while others seem to just do fine without it? What do you think it is that separates those two groups of men? And one final question, do you guys think that I practice nofap? If not, how many times a week do you think I spank it?